There are three basic kinds of outlining: inductive, deductive, and inductive deductive. In this lesson, we're going to be covering all three of those basic kinds of outlines.
Those three basic outline types are the deductive outline, the inductive outline, and the inductive deductive outline. Today we're beginning with the deductive outline. The deductive outline, the main point is clearly introduced before the subpoints. It begins with the main idea and after the introduction. The subpoints follow the main point in logical fashion, and the advantages of this are that it is the simplest and most used form of sermon. It was championed by the Puritans and by John Broadus in his preparation of delivery of sermons, which was the leading sermon text of the 19th and early 20th centuries. So it is broadly used and it is easily recognized by congregations. Its directness makes it ideal for use when we need to be strong and forceful. In it, the main idea, that is, the homiletical main idea, is introduced first. Then the subpoints, subpoint 1, subpoint 2, and subpoint 3, or however many you have, are introduced later. It begins with the main idea. The subpoints either prove, explain, or apply the main idea. For example, let's take the main idea: we should let God handle the hard things. We would introduce that first, and then if we wanted to prove that we should let God handle the hard things, we might say, the saints of the Bible rested in him, the saints of the church rested in him, the saints of today rested in him. And that would be our way of proving the main idea. If the main idea is we can find God when we search with all our hearts, which would be for Jeremiah 29:13, to prove that, we could say Isaiah found God in the temple, Jacob found God as he wrestled with an angel, Elijah found God in the still small voice inside of his head. These prove our basic main homiletical idea. Suppose our main idea is we should let God handle the hard things, and instead of wanting to prove that, we just simply wanted to explain it. Well, we might be able to say, because we are finite and God is infinite, and therefore we're safe when God is in control. Those would be explanations of the main idea. Or let's say the main idea is we can find God when we search with all of our hearts. To explain that, we might say we will not find what we do not seek. We will not find what we do not desire. We will find him when we seek him and him alone. That's just simply an explanation of the main idea. Or let's say we want to apply it. We should let God handle the hard things. Applying it would look like this: we can trust him with our money, we can trust him with our children, we can trust him with our lives. Those are three areas of our lives that apply that main idea. Or the main idea: we can find God when we search with all our hearts. To apply it, we might say we can seek him more than money, we can seek him more than glory, we can seek him more than life itself. We are applying the main idea. So, a deductive outline begins with the main idea, and then the subpoints either prove, explain, or apply it. It's very simple. What are the disadvantages of this structure? First of all, after a while, it's boring. Sometimes it can be too confrontational. It can be too direct. Sometimes it's better to be indirect. It does not necessarily become the best way of overcoming resistance, as well as some of the others outlines that we're going to talk about later. Inductive outline. In the inductive outline, the subpoints are introduced before the main idea. The main idea follows the introduction of the subpoints. The inductive outline was made popular by Pastor Fred Craddock, who wrote several books on the subject. It was used to slowly introduce an idea to the hearer. If there is possibility that there's a resistance to the main idea in the hearer's mind, sometimes to slowly introduce something is the best way of doing it. It eases resistance by coming up on points indirectly. It naturally builds suspense into a sermon, so it gets at that idea that we shared about with the MacGuffin of suspense, getting people to listen and pay attention for the whole sermon. In this idea, the main idea comes at the end, and the subpoints build suspense to the introduction of the main idea. Another way of saying it is that the subpoints ask a question. The main idea gives the answers. Let's look at an example of how that works. Let's take the text, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son." One way of coming at that would be to start with by saying some people look for love in casual and sexual encounters. Other people look for love in marriage and family. Some people look for love in fame and fortune. However, God offered love through Jesus Christ. The idea we want to get to comes at the end of the sermon, not at the beginning. Of course, there are disadvantages of inductive preaching as well. First of all, it has less direct impact on the hearer. It adds suspense, but it takes away directness. Sometimes you just need to be direct. It can get boring too. If you did inductive preaching every week, your people would get tired of it after a while. It can draw attention to the preacher and not the text. Sometimes inductive preaching seems more clever and sophisticated, and that's not an advantage when we're trying to have people pay attention to God and not to ourselves. The inductive deductive outline. The inductive deductive outline, in which the main point is included in the middle of the message, not at the beginning or at the end. The first part of the sermon is usually either posing a problem or asking questions. The second part is the answers or solution. This has advantages over both the deductive and inductive. It has an advantage over the deductive in that it creates suspense and eases into the subject. It has an advantage, however, over the inductive sermon, is that once the subject is mentioned, then you directly explain, prove, or apply the passage. So you spend a good deal of time speaking directly to the congregation. In it, the main idea, first you have the subpoints leading up to it, which are usually questions, and then you have the subpoints leading away from them, which are usually expositions of the answer. What advantages does this have? Many. First of all, it builds suspense in introducing the main idea. It has a strong ending, a strong application. It allows for teaching more than the inductive outline does. And I'll say personally, it's one that I use quite a bit. Here's an example of it from Psalm 73, which is basically an inductive deductive outline already. The question that the psalmist asks is, why do the wicked prosper? He says they sleep comfortably in their beds, they're prosperous and happy, yet they oppress the people and mock God. He doesn't understand why. And so the basic question is why? Answer, which is the main idea. God's justice will eventually keep up with the wicked, but the righteous will be vindicated. They do not know when or how they will slide, but they will slide. The righteous will be rewarded forever, are the points moving away from there. The disadvantages of the inductive deductive are as follows. It can be confusing sometimes. It doesn't always deliver the punch that a deductive outline brings. And it can seem sometimes like a segmented sermon, like it's in too many pieces. But a good preacher is going to work around that. He's going to find a way of tying it all together.
These three kinds of outlines are not the only kinds of outlines